Welcome to the Infinite Life with Katische Haberfield. I'd like to take you on a transformative journey, exploring the mysteries of the soul. I hope you enjoy the regression case studies, mediumship interviews, and fascinating discussions that I've had with guests on the podcast. I hope that these answer some of the questions that you might have about life on this planet, on others, and in other dimensions. Thank you for joining me, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. And, most importantly, share with your friends. Namaste. Welcome back to the Infinite Life with Katische Haberfield podcast. I'm your host, Katische Haberfield. We're in season 13, and in this season, we're talking to fascinating and interesting people who have perspectives, tips, and tools in areas that I'm personally interested and fascinated about, but aren't necessarily my areas of speciality. So I thought I'd have a break from the traditional format of the podcast and bring in some interesting people to converse with. So this week we have a guest who's coming from Las Vegas in Nevada, and his name is Shane. Shane Jacob is the founder of the Horsemanship Journey and developer of Stable Living Coaching. The Stable Living Coaching program uses principles seen in horses to help teens increase self-confidence, overcome stress and anxiety, and decrease the chances of teen pregnancy, depression, and addiction. It offers a companion program for parents so they have less stress, less overwhelm, less guilt, and more peace. Sounds great to me. Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity and I love your show.
Thank you. Now, where do we start? I mean, horses are amazing creatures. There's lots of different angles that you can have a look at horses and how they can help. And I think that not a lot of people think of the healing side of horses. They just think them of as farm hands, modes of transportation, fun things to jump and do traditional sort of horse jumping, horse racing, all that sort of stuff. So I brought you in today to talk about the healing aspects and how we can change our perspective and our lens on how horses can actually be involved in our lives.
Yeah, horses are just these, like you said, these magnificent, noble even creatures. I've been blessed to be able to spend my career working with horses over the past several decades, and it's been an opportunity, a lot of learning. I can't pinpoint why. Some people speculate just the size and the size of their heart and the blood flow, and there's all kinds of theories, but somehow horses connect with people in a way that they need. It's like an emotional need that they serve, and so there's just so many. It's actually a term called hippotherapy where we use horses I've been involved in a lot of things over the years where for disabled people, we see horses a lot of time, horse therapy for PTSD and all kinds of different conditions, right, that horses can help in, and they do. And it's pretty amazing to see the results of when the connection between a horse and human happens and the healing that just naturally happens.
And I didn't grow up with horses, but I do remember when I was a little girl, my cousins, I come from a very big family here on both sides of the family. We had lots of cousins on each side, and we used to always have to travel at Christmas time to go and spend time with the cousins. And I remember being taken out on my mother's side, my auntie's husband, his family were very big horse people. And I remember the horse still, and her name was Pretty Candy. And I remember getting to ride on the horse, and I'm a city girl, so I never get to be around horses. And I remember them taking photos, and I still have those photos today. And I remember talking to my uncle, it must have been 10 years ago, and saying to him, I remember Pretty Candy. That moment of getting to be out with the horses is stuck in my memory as one of the most happy moments of my childhood. And he was flabbergasted that I could even remember the horse's name, and, that I still had the photos and that I had such a connection. And like you say, sometimes you can't explain it. It's just, wow, that was a great experience to have. I'm not a horse rider, I'm not an equestrian, but geez, I really enjoyed that connection to nature, that feeling of being free, and wishing I could have more of an experience with that. But I grew up in the city, so it wasn't to be. Did you grow up with horses?
I did. they were, in my family growing up, they were more of a tool. My dad, I grew up in a ranching family, and so there was a connection there, but it was a little bit different. Horses, the use of horses, I love your story, by the way, about Pretty Candy. I'm going to remember that name. Um, Horses, their use, if you look at it, has changed over time. I mean, they used to be, we relied on them, right, for human beings' well-being, for our transportation. They're our beast of burden. Mules built countries, they built the United States, dams and highways, and carried goods and this and that, and they got us where we needed to be. And so over time, they changed their use, right? And so now, are they really necessary? And even in ranching with drones and all the machines that we have to virtual fences and all kinds of things that we do to do jobs that horses used to do, are they necessary? Well, I think they're necessary. It's just that their use has changed. Now they're for recreation. And I believe that this is a legitimate use for horses, right? It's a legitimate use for horses, and a need that they can feel in certain areas that they actually make a difference.
Mm. And Shane, I guess my journey with understanding a little bit more about the healing components and abilities of horses was, I think it was in 2011 or 2012 or 2013, somewhere around there. I read a book, and it was called The Horse Boy, A Father's Quest to Heal His Son by Rupert Isaacson. I don't know if you know that story at all.
I don't.
No. So Rupert was married to this lady, Kristen Neff, and they both had an autistic son. And Kristen is all about self-compassion and Buddhism and that sort of that approach to the world. Rupert is a bit more traditional in his, I think he's from Zimbabwe or something, in his harsher upbringing. And they had a boy who was very incredibly autistic. And I remember being just totally enamored by this book, because it talked about the lengths that parents will go to help their son cope with emotions. And I mean, this is different because it's an autistic child, but they took this child to Mongolia because they couldn't get any help. All of the experts at the time were just saying, he's autistic, he'll always be like that. You just have to cope with the tantrums. You have to cope with his physical reactions, his violence, and his despair, and we can medicate him. And they said no. And in Mongolia, there's two aspects to his story, but the main aspect of the story was that, so we went to see shamans to help him, but also the journey was involved, that the story talks about, is the little boy, whose name was Rowan's, bonding with the horse that carried him through Mongolia, and the way that the horse helped him deal with his emotions. So there were quite a few books in that series, and I haven't caught up with it, but I remember being vividly entranced by this first introduction to the thought that a horse can help you with your emotions. And how have you seen that experienced in the way that you work?
Yeah, so my program, Stable Living, is a little bit different. It's not actually hippotherapy. We're not putting people with horses all the time. We have a couple of live events where we actually have people come and we demonstrate the principles. Most of the things that we do are with we relate principles to horses. So, for example, forgiveness, right? And so if you look at the principle and what that can mean to somebody who can't let go of something from themselves or somebody else, and when you look at a horse, the way that they handle something that we would perceive to be unfair happening to them, when I see that, when I see how that a horse handles that, there's a little magic that happens somehow in how I can make that happen for me. There's also, I think, an element of, especially with teens and with adults, it doesn't really matter, that, I don't know, it makes it easier to have a little bit of cooperation. It makes principles a little bit easier to accept when there's that like natural, I don't know what the word is, but it's a natural, they see the natural effects, positive effects of what's happening. And so that makes these principles that we know can help human beings a little bit easier to accept. And that's just one. And I'll tell you just a little teeny bit more about that. So let's just say, I'll talk about that one just for a moment. So between horses and human beings, it's a relationship, right? And so it's not going to be perfect. And so in that, let's just say that I, as the human being, do something that is unfair, okay? And let's say that I was unaware is why I was doing this activity. And then I came to say, oh, this horse doesn't understand what's going on. That's why it's not working. We were both getting frustrated. And so something I did here was unfair, and I'm learning now I'm going to try to fix it, right? Another thing that can happen, which happens with human beings relating with each other, is that I react out of emotion, right? I just do a reaction. There's not a lot of thought that goes into it, and then I regret it. I do something that was unfair, right? These things happen in our lifetimes, right? They happen a lot. So when I look at how a horse is not going to be a doormat and let bad activity that he doesn't understand continue to happen with no consequence, right? And so when you go back and you change your thing, he's going to be prepared that the same thing might happen again. And however, once you establish, and it doesn't take very long, that you've changed your behavior, and now you're communicating in him to a way, you've changed this perceived unfairness or whatever, you've repaired to the best that you can, you've changed your activity of how you're going about doing whatever it was that you're doing. And it only takes about 2 to sometimes 3 times, depending on the severity of what the thing was. But what happens is once that horse realizes, the trust comes back so very fast, and then it's gone. And I mean, it's gone, right? There's no residue, right? Immediately, you could call that residue when you first come back, because he's unclear if he thinks the same thing could happen again. So it's not like horses just roll over all the time and let you do things that they think are unfair. But what the difference is a lot of times in our exchanges with each other, being able to fully let go, right, of things that we've done and what they mean about ourselves, and things that people have done to us and what we make that mean about ourselves and about them. A lot of times we can hold on to those things that we're not living in the moment. We have this stuff back planned, and we just hold on to it for so long. And horses really do. It's gone, right? When you say forgive and forget, it's gone. So when you actually witness this, right? And it's not like you would do something unfair just for the sake of a demonstration, but when you see we improve our relationship with horses over time, and if you have ever seen this exchange, it's magical.
And so how did you get the idea to apply the principles that you've seen in horses to help teens increase their self-confidence? Where did that come from you? Why did you realize that there was this need? And talk us through that story of that.
Yeah, it just came about from basically teaching riding and teaching horsemanship, and I saw this, and people are, we're drawn to horses. I think it's credited to Winston Churchill said that there's something about the outside of a horse that's good for the inside of man, right? Men and women. And I've found that to be true. I don't know what exactly, like I said before, I can't make the connection to it, but in teaching horsemanship, I've seen this connection and people's strong desire to learn. Really, I think what we want to do is we want to connect. I think we want to connect with our horse. I think that's what people are really drawn to. They're drawn to a relationship where it's a willing partnership, but I think what we really crave is the connection. I think we crave a trust relationship where we have a solid connection. And so there's parallels in horses, and there's some things that do not parallel because they don't have the same type of brain that we do, right? And which for them, that's just the way of things, and that's good. And so there's some things that we can look at that they do that are helpful, but not everything aligns with people because they're not human beings. But there's so many things. And what I found is that when you look at principles, if we can make a connection to something that they're doing, what I found in order to answer your question is that teens and adults, I enlist more cooperation. It's through demonstrating or showing a principle inspired by a horse rather than showing you a research paper or me giving you some facts about saying, look, Katiche, this is what I need for you to do because I said so. But if I can tie this to the thing, I enlist so much more cooperation. So it helps with the desire for you to get your own desired result.
And so if there's a parent and they said, look, my child is feeling feelings of anxiety and potentially depression, how can your horsemanship journey help them? What are the parallels between what horses do? And how do you explain that to a parent that says, yeah, okay, I can help your child with anxiety and potentially depression? What are the parallels in how does a horse principle help there?
Yeah. So it's just about all principles. You know, horses, one thing about horses that which kind of goes along with my idea of forgiveness is that they're really in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're fully in the moment. There's not like any residue from the past. They are fully reacting. And so there's a big lesson just in that right there, right? Because when we look at the reasons that we're doing things and the reasons that we're feeling things, a lot of times we have to uncover and go back and see what's playing in the background that's affecting what's happening right now. Because the more that we can people that can come to live in the moment, which is like horses, is really helpful. Depression and anxiety, when you look at that, when you uncover really what's happening inside of our mind as we learn how to manage our minds and understand all the noise that's happening in there. Because, you know, the thing of it is as young people, there's not really a manual. And there's so much massive change going on throughout the teenage years and this transition to adulthood. It's a big deal. And it's not easy. Being older, I look back and a lot of times it's easy for me and people of my generation to say, well, you know, you guys got it so easy, but there's a lot of things that are so much more difficult. So as we uncover and really try to make the connection, like the horse connection, right? And even as adults, if we try to make that connection with these young adults and teens and adolescents to find out, to be able to uncover and be able to come back into first of all, to understand, I think what my big message to the world, there's a couple of things, and that is that I think that our goal in life a lot of times is to feel good all the time. And we're really just like driving for that. Our brain drives us to feel good. And we're not really taught that it's okay not to feel good sometimes, right? We're not going to. And so when we have these thoughts that cause us anxiousness or even can lead to depression, we think something's wrong. So then we go and do something that makes us feel better, and it leads to something that's worse. And that's kind of been that was my life story as a young person. It led me to causing tremendous amount of permanent pain and damage to human beings and put a damper on a good part of my life. And that was the things, is the noise that was going on inside of my head about not knowing that I was okay. And, you know, these bad feelings, and I didn't know it was okay not to feel bad sometimes, right? That's just going to be the way that it was. And so if we can unpack and have kids understand that, hey, it's okay, it's going to feel bad sometimes, and have a connection and have somebody there with them, because this connection thing is something that's just it's a deep emotional need that we all crave as human beings. Specifically, without being with a horse, that's kind of hard to make that connection, but living in the moment is surely a big important piece of that.
And I have two boys, just to give you context. So I've got one who's, what is he? He's 16 turning 17, and the other one is 18 turning 19 this year. And so as a mother, you have to hold yourself back sometimes, because when your child is in distress, right, or your child is angry, or they're frustrated, or whatever it is, life isn't working out for them, the first thing you want to do is you want to make it better. It's okay. I'll make you feel better. What can I do to fix it? And then you have to pull back and go, he's okay to express that anger. He's okay to feel life's unfair. He's allowed to feel that outcome was rigged or not in his favor, or my sons are debaters, so they do lots of public speaking. And I find it really difficult sometimes, because I'm trying to learn how to guide them through this. But in debating, there are certain topics where the topic really does not slant towards the discussion that you've got to do, affirmative or negative, and they're given a topic and it's just really skewed towards the other team. And that's part of the skills to trying to just see how you can have a go. And they'll come out afterwards and they might be like, that sucked. That topic was really bad. That was rigged. And it might take them several days to get over that. And you're like, you as a parent, you're tired of hearing the same story and you're trying to give them the balanced perspective. And sometimes I'm like, just let him sit down with his big brother and they can gnash it out and talk about how unfair it was and what they can do better next time. And yes, they lost that debate. No, he didn't do anything that means that he threw the debate or it was his fault or because he's the youngest on the team or whatever. But it's perfectly normal to feel upset when you lose something, right?
There's so many lessons in what you're saying. I totally relate. It's the kind of things that we talk about a lot every day in stable living. It's the expectation that is life going to be fair or not? That's number one. Is it going to be? And then what are we going to decide to think about that? And what are we going to, how are we going to be able to handle it? And then failure, like what's our perspective on failure? What are we, we're so, particularly at this age that you're talking about, late teens, and that is, we think that it's pretty easy to take on an idea that failure really means something about ourselves. You know what I'm saying? And that life is not about, I don't have anything against winning, but failure is going to be part of the deal. We have to kind of learn how to embrace failure to get to where we're going.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Lots of good stuff there.
Yeah. I know that, for example, in our school years, people want to encourage kids to be our best and we want them to strive to be the best they can, but it does put this external pressure on them that in the school world you're expected to get A, and win this championship and win this cup and be the premiers. And once you get out of school, you realize school is a really kind of bubble environment, isn't it? It doesn't teach you that you're going to fail at your first job, you'll be late for your first interview, you'll stuff up the Zoom connection, you'll have a boss who absolutely friggin' hates you. So it can be hard to explain to them that they're in a bubble right now.
Yeah, there's so much more. We get to, I just did a podcast this on myself, where we get to where we think we're finished as young people. We kind of have it all, and there's so much more available. I want to just comment on your comment, and that is I think what at the core of what my perspective on what you just said, at the core is the idea that can seem conflicting about self-acceptance. And I can speak to this because I struggled with the idea for so long. And here's what I mean by that. Self-acceptance says that regardless of where you are, you need to believe and accept everything's just great, right? Yet self-improvement means to strive for more. So I can't wrap my head around this conflict. I'm like, I am not going to accept myself. I'm not happy with where I'm at. When I have my results, I'll celebrate. I feel like you're asking me to take a trophy and I haven't won yet. And I was really stuck in this cycle of believing this way. And in some ways, in the way that I thought about it, it was a complete backwards idea. Okay. But what I have found is, if you can wrap your head around this idea, and this is one thing that we talk to teens about too, because it's kind of a hard concept for me, it was for me to get, and that is that it is possible for me to fully accept me, and accept my position and where I'm at without accepting defeat, without accepting mediocrity, without settling for less, without accepting failure or any of it. Right? It's kind of like forgiveness. It's like separating what I have done with my value as a human being. Because if I choose to be happy with me 100% and fully accept my position, my station, my progress, my evolution in life as I am right now 100%, if I can do that, okay, does not mean that this is where I'm going to be. Right? It just means that I'm happy with me and my value as a human being, as a soul on this planet, fully. My infinite, priceless value at this moment and at all times. Because once I've done that, I've erased and opened the gate and cleared the highway, if you will, to be able to actually move quicker to where I was going, where before my thinking that I couldn't was one of the main things that was holding me back. So this conflict that you talked about, where it's win, 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 and if you don't, there's a problem. It's hard to manage both of those, but it's possible to do. And it really can make concrete, measurable differences if you can accept that idea.
Yeah. And so for anyone who's listening, do you have any tips for them in helping their teens or even themselves? Because I know I have this constant, relentless battle, as you said, between I need to improve with I'm happy where I am. It does sound easy conceptually, but it's not easy. Some thoughts and ideas on how we can navigate that in our daily life.
Yeah. Yep. If inside, what helped me and what I propose is that you separate your position, your progress, your goals, separate what you're unhappy with that you've done in the past, and separate that from the imperfect perfection of you.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can look at the mirror and say, Shane, you haven't done everything perfect, which is not going to be possible because you're an imperfect human being as it is. And there's also a tip that I learned from Michelle Maidenberg, which is to tie the things that I want to improve to a value that I have.
Okay.
And so that means, let's just say that I'm unhappy because I didn't reach a goal. And so I look at it and say, well, why didn't I reach my goal? Well, I didn't reach my goal because I got derailed to go do this other thing temporarily. Well, why did I go do the other thing? Why am so unhappy with that? Well, it turns out that I did that to help another human being. So, and that's because I care about other human beings and I tie that to a goal. This is an example. I'm totally making it up as we go. But we are driven by our core values. We're not bad people. And so if we can see that in our mind, that helps us maintain our 100% value separated from the things that we want to accomplish or the things that we haven't done, that we want to do differently again in the future, because we're not going to get it right all the first time. But most of the time, I think all of the time, if you look back and you tie the things that you're unhappy with as far as your progress to a value, it helps you maintain your own, you can see it clearer, okay? You can see your own value, right?
And how did you determine your own core values? We talk about, you talked about the fact that you were a much different person in your teen, and part of where you are today is due to your own journey. How did you get through this struggle and identify your own, what Shane's core values were? Because that's obviously helped you in your self-perception and your desire to help others. So how does a mixed up kid figure out his own values to help him in that process? How did you do it?
Yeah. If you can have a mentor, it helps you a lot, because it took me a long time. I lived in an alcoholic haze, in an addiction, in a super destructive phase for a good portion of my life, and it was ugly. Okay, it was ugly, and the things that I did fed my insecurities. They fed my proof. I continued to lay on proof of my lack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of my inability to cope, of my deficiency as a human being. Every day I continue to pile on proof by the things that I did, I got, doing jail time and just a whole bunch of ugliness, right? And so that's that's tough, and we all get to experience shame at different levels. All of us have done something. We've all done something we're not too proud of. And so we get to experience shame, but learning shame resilience is a skill that the sooner you learn it, the better. And I'm all about that, because we've all done something. We've all done something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And here's the thing, regardless of what you have done, regardless. That's a really big statement, but I'm serious about it. Regardless of what you have done, you can come to know that you're still 100%, the same 100% as me and you and every other soul on this planet. You can come to know that. And one way to do that, the one step is to have a mentor, or at least have somebody that has earned the position that you can be able to own your story and share that with, and that you can be able to trust and make that connection. And those are the things that help us get through those times. Is having a mentor like that. And I first started out, I had me and my horse, and that was the beginning of this process.
Yeah.
And so that's where it came from.
Interesting. And when you say look for a mentor, a lot of kids are like, well, how do I know if this person, not all adults are safe, not all adults are going to help them in the right direction. A lot of adults haven't helped them, can't help them because they haven't gone through their own shame resilience, or they haven't done their own emotional reflection. How do you explain to kids how to find a mentor? I mean, a lot of grown-ups still are like, a mentor? Yeah, I should get one of those. Where do I look? So how does a kid who's struggling with their emotions go, how do I know what qualities there are to be in an adult to know that I can trust them? What should I look out for? Where should they be? Like, where do you start?
Yeah, it's a super good question. You can't go to the www.mentor.com or the mentor store. There is one, I don't know about it. But I think as parents, we can help play a role in that. We can look at people who have proven track records that we trust, and we can try to look at the individuals that our kids are looking up to, that they're drawn to, and that we trust, that we can put a stamp of approval on where they're going with that. I think that we can play a role in that. And the same thing applies for us, for adults. There's a lot of truth in where we spend our time. We're the average of our 5 people. And if we want to change what we're doing, one of the easiest, quickest ways to do that is through the people that we're spending our time around. But it does take an effort, just like you said, because it's not going to be handed to you. It's something that we need to research and develop relationships and then monitor until we really have a solid trust relationship with who those mentors are. But it's a huge concept, because especially with kids, they want to be, they're drawn, they look up to these people, and they're trying to emulate them in every way. And so you can really make progress with kids, can really change with mentors.
And as you said, the key word there is trust, and you don't get trust immediately. You have to develop it and be on a journey there with trust. I know, for example, and I'm not supposed to talk about my kids, but watching my youngest son, he had this goal and he had people that he wanted to emulate with, and he knew where he wanted to be with his public speaking skills. But in order to do that, he sort of had to look at who he was hanging around with and say, are they where I want to be? No. Okay, so now I have to sort of strategically look at who's around where I want to be with, and how do I get in with that group or those people? And initially it was setback. They're like, no, you can't come in here. No, you can't do our training. You're younger than us. You're way younger than us. This is a privilege we have had to earn. And it's taken him a couple of years to earn their trust, to become, so that he wasn't like this little pain in the neck kid, but somebody who was actually really interested in learning off them, and that his ego wasn't so big that they might tell him something and then he would completely disregard it and say, oh no, I know better than that. So I guess with yourself, you talked about how your horse helps you in those hard times, and I think there's a little bit of a trust thing between you and the horse there that might be a good parallel here for people to understand about developing trust. Do you have some reflections on how your horse helped you develop trust in yourself and in life and in love, in terms of self-love against self-acceptance?
Yeah. Yep. I do. So trust is, we can't demand it. When the only way to get trust is that, what I believe about trust is that, what I've learned is that we can make our best decision at the time, which we usually always do, to extend trust. Okay. And then we just monitor it as we go along. And so, but the key is that we have the courage. So first of all, if I'm making the best decision that I can, I'm going to proactively extend trust. Okay. The thing that really holds us back in relationships and especially with horses, because what we're doing with horses is we're not moving forward because we have fear, right? And so this happens just as much with people and horses. So the idea is to have the courage to extend trust, right? Now, maybe that trust will get demolished and we'll suffer some from it. Maybe that'll hurt. Maybe it'll cause some damage for us in some way. And maybe as we monitor over time, it'll continue to build and grow and to be into a beautiful thing. But we'll never know unless we have the courage to step out and extend that trust. And I think that's the biggest message I have with that, is to have the courage. Courage sounds real nice, but it has, like, when I say it, most people are like, yes, I want to be courageous because it sounds so good, but it doesn't feel good when you're doing it. It's hard. It's like feeling fear and taking action through it is much easier said than done. But as we do that, we break through and we exercise courage, the trust increases, our capability increases, and then we have confidence to rely on from the past. It's a beautiful process, but it starts with having the courage to extend the trust and being willing to offer that out there, seeing that there's a higher result on the other side of it.
And I mean, it's like the ability to pick yourself back up after, that's what fear is for me. I experience fear on a daily basis. You start a podcast, who's going to listen to it? How do I record? How do I find guests? Every single time I'm like, how am I going to make sure I relate to this person? And you've got to go through the emotion and trust that you will be okay. But how do you actually have that trust in yourself? Well, as you said, you go, I'm going to do my best right now. And I might feel all these emotions and I can freak out and stop right here and now, or I can just keep going minute by minute or whatever it is. And I guess to take it back to my own personal life, when my kids were little, so I got divorced when the kids were very young. They were 2 and 4, I think it was. And I was very aware of my own emotions and their emotions. And one of the things that I did do was we went to one of these horse sessions, and I went there for the kids, right? I was like, let me help them with their emotions, and this could be a fun thing to do. And what was interesting was that watching the horses, so they had this field with these horse therapists, and we did some drawings first because they were only little, and then they were like, okay, it's time for you to meet the horses, and the horses will choose you. You don't choose the horse. They will come and show us the signs as to which horse wants to come to you. And so I was like, okay, the kids all choose their horses. The kids will have their horses chosen for them by the horse first. So, they did the brushing of the hair and getting them to the point where they got to lead them around the paddock. And then I was just like, this is for them, this is fine. And then there's this big, beautiful horse that was just like suddenly got really impatient. It's like, all right, I'm here for the mum now. And they had a laugh with me. They're like, she's chosen you, my dear, and it's your turn now. And I'm like, oh, it's all right, it's just for the kids. No, she wants to work with you. And it wasn't until that I went through that, okay, let me see how I go. Do I feel a little bit nervous coming over this horse and watching the horse, I guess, try to establish trust with you? Because, I'm not from a horse family. And my last interaction before that was as a small child. And I'm like, oh, I love the horse. I want to be around the horse. But how do I appropriate? Session's not really for me. It's for the kids. And then what do I do? I mean, it's pretty easy to brush a horse, isn't it? And then your own emotions come forward and the horse interacts with that. And then somehow in the magic of it, at the end of the session, you're like, whoa, that feels better. It's a hard thing to explain in words, but it's a beautiful process to watch and sort of reflect on from above afterwards in your memories and say, yeah, I don't really know what happened there, but geez, I feel better from that interaction. I learned a bit about myself, and it was funny just to watch the horse mirror me.
Horses do mirror us just like our kids do. That's a great story. Yeah, our horses, another thing that you just reminded me of, horses, they need our leadership, just like our kids do. They really have you don't really know it sometimes. It's not blaring in your face, but and neither are our kids a lot of times, especially when they think they're grown and they already know everything, and you're kind of in the way, Mom, now. And but they still crave that, and they need our leadership. And so the more that we can understand about ourselves, the more that we can have the confidence to be that calm and confident leader that they need so much at these times, really, when they're growing up.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to touch on, before we go, because we're coming up to the top of the hour, it's coming really fast. What was the name of your podcast again, if listeners want to learn more about your approach to helping teens and adults?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It's called the Horsemanship Journey podcast.
Okay, that's easy to remember. And any final remarks or comments or insights that you would like to leave with listeners today?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today, and I appreciate this last question. My message to the world is that the way that we view ourselves. I ask people a lot of times. I say, what if you could believe anything that you wanted to about yourself? What if you could? And what I've come to know is that having a solid relationship with ourselves, and what I mean by that is an unconditional loving relationship with ourselves, is not just a good idea. It's not a good idea. Okay, it's not just that you're going to have better results and you have more peace of mind and you'll be happier and you'll have more success and be driven to get your results easier, because all that's true. But it's way more than that. Without that, then what we don't do, without a commitment to pursue a loving relationship with ourselves over our lifetime, because a lot of times we think it's something that we just have and then we move on to the next thing. And it's something that is happening throughout our life, every moment. Without that commitment, we don't develop the capacity to be able to fully give to the people that we deeply love about, and to fully make our contribution to this world for the short time that we're on it. So my plea from me to you is to know that regardless of what you have done, and I mean regardless of what you've done or what you feel about what you've done or what you think about this or that, to come to know somehow in your heart and your soul that you are 100%. You are a priceless, invaluable soul on this planet, period. And I hope you can come to know that. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Shane. I really appreciate that. And I will leave it. That's exactly perfect advice. And I will leave it with that. So thank you.